experience is with Easter, but for me personally, I think Easter is a wonderful season. And that is why I thought of coming your way to encourage you that don't let this season pass by without really sitting down to understand your worth to God. Whatever situation you might find yourself in now, whatever position you find yourself in now, whether economically thriving or not thriving, whether you're locked in or locked out, whatever it is that you find yourself in, you are worth more to God. Your value had already been decided even before you were born. God has already shown and extended his love to us in a fabulous way that no man can write us off, can say that we have no value. Your value has already been given by God. And so you do not need to be re-evaluated by anybody else. Your value comes from God. And if they ask you, how do you know? By letting his son die on the cross. And so when we go through this session of Jesus taking the Last Supper, his betrayal, his humiliations, and his dying on the cross and the resurrection, this points us to one fact, that God loves us so much that even when his son was asking at a certain point to say, if it was possible, could you let me hold on a little bit, or could you let this pass by? He held on to the fact that we needed to go through with this plan because we needed to reach them. We needed to bridge the gap. We needed to make the crossover. We needed to let him get closer so that they can capture the purpose, the value that I. And so when I read Psalm 8, I think Psalm 8 kind of summarizes it from the verse 4 to 8. It says that what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You put all things under his feet, all oxen, sheep, even the beasts of the fields, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea that pass through the paths of the seas. You see, God has already decided the value that we ought to have. And for my life, I think for the rest of my life, you will hear me use this value word, especially in relation to human life, because I think that especially from the place that I originate from, I think that it's more important that we understand the value of life, the preservation of life, the effort towards making the human life the most essential thing besides every other thing. Because until we see that the people are the most important thing that we have, the most important assets that we have, we will not do enough to protect them. We will not do enough to cater for them. We will not do enough to work together to see the good wealth of them. And that brings me to Corona. I know you probably was wondering, when is he going to start talking about Corona? Everybody's talking about Corona, COVID-19, and things like that. Yes, true, I would talk about it. When you compare the value that God placed on man, okay, and the value that some other nations place on their citizens and their people, and their effort towards the preservation and making sure that they have a good and better life, it's not always the same for every other country. There are countries that, unfortunately, people suffer. Unfortunately, people do not have the privilege like other countries might have, and it is disturbing. So I was actually focused in the beginning more on the COVID-19 because, it was just everything that the news was all about. But I don't know, at some point I kind of had this flip of trying to understand the aftermath of all these things. What will it be? What would the aftermath be for the nations? And more so for the nations that do not have the capacity to be able to cater for their people like other nations will or are able to. The low income areas, the emerging markets. I recently read that some African nations are already asking China to give them a free period of paying back their loans to the Chinese nation or to the Republic of China. We know in America they have already been able to release a huge, think about $2 trillion back into the economy to support businesses, corporations after all this trouble. In Europe, I think almost proximity of 300 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And then you think of course, Ghana, Africa, Nigeria, all these places, if you can hear the flight. Maybe 10 billion, something. Talk of Pakistan, all the other places. Think about it. The reason why this Easter period is very important and we have to uphold it is that when you look at Easter from the back, from the front, when it started, imagine Jesus with his disciples. He tells them, this is what is going to go down, guys. I will be betrayed. I will be delivered to the leaders of the nation. I will be beaten, spit on, humiliated, hanged on the cross. This doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. And so if you were with Jesus at that time, probably you might be thinking like, this is not really what I had in mind. I thought this thing was going to play out in a whole different way. But it doesn't look like it is. And I think that is how it looks like now for most people, especially in nations where people do not have access to welfare systems. And it's always the same thing, back and forth. When this morning when I was watching the news, I saw that once again in America, for instance, the Black Americans are the ones hit hard by the COVID-19. And thank God this thing has not taken off in Africa as the Ebola did. And I'm praying and holding on that God will preserve our people from massive, whatever this might be, transmission. But this doesn't really look good. But also beyond just the point of infection and all these people being infected by this virus, it still comes down to the same thing, that even after we've made it out of this, the question that I ask is Africa going back into poverty again? Are people going to be able to afford the school fees of their children? Are people going to be able to go back to the hospital? Are they going to lose their jobs? When I visited last year, people's lives were changing. People were moving up on the ladder. The living standard was growing, not for everybody. Let us not be naive. Let us not rush into celebration. There is more work to be done. But there are still people who are on bottom of the ladder. There are still people struggling, and there is more to be done. But for me, this Easter season just reminds me of how we as people of God and as people in general can come together and see how do we make sure that people's life, the honor that God bestowed on man, the glory that God bestowed on his creatures, on his creation, his art creation, which is the human life. How do we uphold that value? Irrespective of skin color, irrespective of sexual orientation, irrespective of whatever. Because look, as long as we do not uphold man as God sees man, we have already condemned the creation of man. And so think and open your mind and understand how is your perception, your personal perception, when it comes to your neighbor. God says, you are so valuable to me. You are so important to me. I will let my son die for you. And you go out there and you treat people like they are nothing. In this season of Easter, I just want you to look back and say, I'm going to give people the same value, the same respect, the same love. The cross equals to love. That's what my church preaches. The same level of love that God has shown me, I will be showing it to my neighbor in this season. And I am thinking that then Africa will come out of this problem. People in low-income areas will come out of this COVID-19 supporting each other, saying that, oh, we are all going to be poor together. We are going to, if it comes down to whatever I have, I am willing to share it. Because I know in some areas there are hoarders, there are people who are worried they have enough in the bank accounts, but they are still worried. And I know you might be out there and you only go to the market to make your ends meet. That you don't have enough, or you're relying on some remittances from Europe or whatever it is. But I just want you to be encouraged that this is the moment where you don't only have to think about yourself, but think of others. Because that is what Easter is all about. Jesus thought of us. And that's why he took this step. This might not be the moment because, we recently launched an educational crowdfunding just to solicit funds, and eventually somewhere in next year launch an education program focused on technical, after-school technical studies for starting from Ghana, hopefully grow it out to other countries. And after sharing it around, I think one of the comments we received from a friend of ours was that, is this actually the moment to be doing this? No, of course, this is not the moment to be doing this. But tell me, when is the moment to be doing anything, actually? Is it when I have enough? Is it when I have been able to accumulate enough? That is where I have to start sharing what I have. Or is just understanding that sharing what I have, even though in my eyes might not be enough, is already what God expects from me. Because his son did not spare his life, even though at that moment he did not have enough life. He just gave it. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Of course it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy planning to spend 500 euros in this season to make sure that the orphanages are being cared for. It's not easy sharing your bag of rice and saying, I'm going to give half of it to my neighbor. It's not easy. And the cross was not easy, people. And so until we as people comes from the same alignment with the same like-minded like Christ had. And I'm talking about the churches. This is the time to go back into the coffers of the churches, into the funds of the churches. And churches need to come together. This is not about denominations and tribalism and partisans and who is what. No, this is the time to come together as leaders of the nations, wherever it is in Africa. Because there are some nations, and I'm speaking purposely and directly to Africa, because this is important. This is our time to make sure that we do not go back 5 years again. And if we don't do something, after all this is over, our economy will be 5 years back.